What? I'm speechless. I don't even, I don't exactly know what to say. Wow. So this is, of course, it's time for a little Patreon Wednesday Q&A, and thank you so much to all the patrons. Got a lot of new patrons, actually, in the past couple of weeks. I don't know if that has anything to do with, or, has anything to do with what happened yesterday, of course, because I'm recording this on November 9th, 2016. So the day after Election Day. And wow, I'll be honest, I did not see Trump winning. I sure as hell didn't vote. I have businesses to run. So, I do actual shit that matters. But, I guess that's kind of the odd thing is like, how exactly did he win? Is the voting system not entirely rigged? I mean, it's very strange. We're going to see how this plays out. I don't know exactly what all this says. I certainly feel like, I'll tell you this straight up. And in case you didn't know, I'm sure everybody knows, Trump is president-elect. And not only that, but Republicans, now or will in the coming year control the House, the Senate, and the United States. I mean, it's a kind of a clean sweep in many ways. Boy. I really appreciate, let me just put it this way. I mean, I guess, maybe all that this all really says, it's all very much a cultural commentary on where we're at. I mean, something I had said on various social media is that, well, other than some, marijuana decriminalization that went through in various states, which, not that I care for the political process, but good. If people can get access to marijuana better, fantastic. And I mean that. But, other than that, I mean, really, it would seem that, if this was actual people actually voting, that's how Trump got in, then American culture really hasn't evolved socially, they haven't evolved in over 150 years, despite what anybody says, or despite any actions that have happened, because, this guy, this guy's scum. Trump is absolute scum. He's a loser. He's a failure in life, frankly. And no, winning the presidency, success is no guarantee of virtue. And I see no virtue here. And as far as, his own business success, he had a good start in life, frankly. And he didn't even do as well as some others have. Paris Hilton has done better in her life, with the money that she inherited, blah, 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 than he has. So, even by his own metrics, he's not the best at what he does. So, this guy is just absolute slime. Wow. I agree with what some people are saying. Actually, I'll quote, and she said this pretty openly, so I don't mind sharing it. But of course, the great MK Lords, we're all a huge fan of her here. She said, time for us, faggots, nasty women, and degenerates to get dangerous again. Holy shit, I totally agree. Because, it looks like, not that, I have issues here and there, and we're going to get into some questions here. We've got some doozies for this week, okay? Not that I'm one for saying, that necessarily a culture war need be fought, but, there has been a culture war going on for a good long while in America, and frankly, the anti-conservatives, I don't know what terms we want to use for that. I certainly consider myself an anti-conservative, have lost, it would seem. And ironically, because a lot of people would say that, no, they didn't. That the SJWs and all these other, whatever terms you want to use, that they've taken over and all that. Well, I guess not. It's all very strange. There's going to be, I don't really care to make sovereign tech, necessarily in this way, a political thing. And people have a whole bunch of different theories as to what's happened. I genuinely, please take no offense to this, okay? Because I really do care about what my listeners think, but I don't want to hear it from anyone. It's a conversation I'm not exactly interested in having. As far as what is with Trump and all this stuff. I'm just, it makes me want to just take a screwdriver and I just don't care. But I'm putting it out there, and just saying that, yeah, I mean, not Trump himself, but what it says about the culture, that is a conversation I am interested in having. That one, not so much, anything to do with the president or, with the president-elect or the political nonsense in general. That's whatever. Yeah, so there you have it. I feel personally, I mean, I agree with MK here. I feel a need to in many ways ramp shit up. Ramp up the anti-conservative rhetoric, ramp up the anti-conservative methods, and all of that. And and it's funny too. And I this will actually lead nicely into this week's first question. But actually, well, before I get into that, I just want to say quick that, boy, my old friend Harlan Ellison, I know you can't hear this, but we really need that third volume of Dangerous Visions right now. I mean, we really, really do, buddy. Okay, so get on that. I'm just putting that out there because that anthology helped change the world once, and maybe it can do it again. Though I doubt it. But it'd be good to have it out there. Anyway, so, I get a lot of complaints, I'll tell you. I get a lot of complaints. I've gotten a lot of emails, and on various social media, people have talked to me saying that, wow, I wish you'd take out, like, the sex stuff, like out of the interstitials, out of the intro beds for, for all the segments. Like, at the end, during the climax of a Sovereign Tech episode, right, everybody starts moaning, blah, 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 blah. No way. I mean, for a moment, actually, just recently with episode 200 coming up, I thought about it. I was like, yeah, I could probably reach a bigger audience if I took it out. And then this happened, and I'm like, no, fuck it. I'm leaving it. And I might even take it to the next level. I just, no fucking way. Because that's what really won, this whole thing. Forget about Trump. Conservatism won. And I was really hopeful that conservatism was going the way of the dodo, or at least it was, kind of on its way out. But this would seem to imply the opposite. So, but what's funny? So I want to say this too. What's really funny is the same people, and I know them, especially on social media. I know them by name, and I know them. I know some of them personally. The same people that complain about the fact that I have sex in this show, or like that I have women moaning in various episodes and all of this, the very fact that I have, like last week, we did episode 199B, right? And at the end, at the last 15 minutes, I did a I did a prequel to 199C that'll be coming out this week. I did a bit of a fictional episode at the end. And there's this huge orgy scene, right? Tons of people moaning, okay? And I had people freaking out. I know for a fact that these same people watch Game of Thrones. And they like it when that show gets sexy. I know because they've said it and I've seen it. I hate the show, but whatever. But here's the thing. You know what I think it is? This is the conclusion I got to. And then we're going to get into some tech questions, don't worry. But you know what I think it is? I think that, see, on Game of Thrones, is, at least as far as I see it, it's usually not some kind of like celebration. It's usually not some kind of happy thing. It's usually something, it's always treated as being depraved. Or even when, what is it, the Wilds or whatever, that redhead is stooping Jon Snow or something, it's usually, it's animalistic. It's not, a royal person or a person of good breeding wouldn't engage in that and all that, right? It's always treated as depraved. And I think that's why people like it in Game of Thrones, because it fits in with their narrative. It fits in with the societal narrative that no, sex is just something we got to do to have babies. This is terrible. We're not good people when we're engaged in that, blah, blah, blah. Now, maybe somebody could prove me wrong that there was a couple scenes somewhere in Game of Thrones where sex was had and it was treated as a beautiful celebration of life and of having a good time. But I don't think so. And having like an orgy scene with a bunch of politicians, no, that is not a good time. That's disgusting. Fucking politicians, fucking military people, fucking policemen and all that is, there's nothing sexy about that at all. in general. So, I just think it's ironic that people complain about it being in my show, but then they go and watch Westworld, they watch all this shit, with sex in it, and they don't bat an eye. But I put it in my podcast. Oh, how terrible. Because I treat it as a great thing. I treat it as a good time. I treat it as, as something that has absolutely zero to do with procreation. Which, as we've talked about many times on Sovereign Tech Q&A episodes, sex is equally about, it can be equally considered for procreation as much as it could be considered as a social lubricant, as a social action. It co-evolved, okay? It did not just evolve for procreation. It could have evolved for completely different reasons and it would have been totally legitimate. Why do kisses feel good? Why do all these other things feel good? Is that for procreation? No. Unlike what mommy told you when you were younger, mommy or daddy, okay, kissing someone doesn't get you pregnant. Why? Because it evolved for pleasure. Just like intercourse did. Just like, rubbing clits did. Just like stroking dicks did, okay? It's not just for procreation. So anyway, I hope you guys are guys and gals, I know you'll enjoy 199C. I've got a doozy. I have a lot of guest stars that are going to be on it. And it's going to be a great time. So anyway, and people, people don't realize how long that 15 minutes at the end of 199B that I did. I know you're like, well, there was a lot of music, and that's going to get into our first question. There was a lot of music, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, there is, but even what I did, just that 15 minutes took about, maybe 17, 18 hours to put together, all said and done. I mean, it takes time. It really takes time, to put that stuff together, and to do a much longer version. Oh shit. So I put a lot of work into these things. And with all that said, why don't I answer this first question? And then I actually, what I want to get into is a little bit of a story. I have that I won't be able to get to this week, but it's so important. I want to touch on it here. So the first question, let's get right into that. Was the music during that 15 minutes that I was just talking about, the music, did I compose that? And so this is our little segment that we call Sovereign Tech Secrets. No, I didn't. I actually didn't compose any of that music. Both the three songs that were used, there was actually a total of 3 songs, even though it sounds like maybe 4 or 5. There were 3 songs used during that, well, actually, I guess it was 4 if you count the jazz, the smooth jazz that was played. Which I don't know who did that. That's just like kind of random, kind of stock music. I'm actually not sure who performed that, but I use it all the time along with some other ones. The more popular smooth jazz that I use, which I'm a huge fan of, smooth jazz or soft jazz, whatever they want to call it, from the 90s that everybody thought would be the music of the future, like whenever we played Wing Commander or, even in like Star Trek and a bunch of different stuff, like they always use that soft jazz. I'm a huge fan, but that music, that comes from Kim Waters, the stuff I usually use where it's like... No, that's Kim Waters. That's a song After Midnight. But some of the other soft jazz that I use or smooth jazz, I don't know who does that. It's all just kind of random. Anyway, so the other music, it's by a group called Narto. And I mean, they're not like a big deal. They're just kind of a synthwave pop. In fact, I think it's even one guy. I don't even know that it's a group. But that's by Narto. And so the music at the very end of the 15 minutes, and when Agent Sovryn is driving up to the Wolf's Lair, that is actually one song, kind of split in half, and that is by Narto. And I think it's called "When My Eyes Turn Red." I think that's the name of the song. It's great. It doesn't have any more than what I played. Like that's kind of the whole of it, but it's just a phenomenal couple of minutes. Of course, the Airwolf theme, which is exactly what played during that. And if you didn't notice, Red Wolf, actually, the name Red Wolf is from Airwolf. Like that whole concept. The show Airwolf, one of my favorite shows of all time. I've talked about it many times on Sovryn Tech. That, and especially the first season. The first season was such high-end, dead serious drama. It is some of the best drama ever put on television. And like I said, it's serious as a heart attack. Now, once they went to season 2 and they brought on Sweet Britches, I'm not joking. That was what they called the lady, okay, or what they called the woman that they brought on, okay? When they brought her on and they did season 3, the show kind of dropped the ball. Not that there weren't great episodes, because one of them, I believe, was the episode with Red Wolf, which is where there was a second Airwolf that was built. But Red Wolf, it had like a red paint design on it, and it had lasers instead of the bullets and all this stuff. It was, kind of a more advanced version. That's where I got Red Wolf from. So even Red Wolf wasn't necessarily an original idea. Of course, the loadout that I did on it, I made it not have offensive weapons. It was all defensive. That's my own personal taste because I don't care for the use of lethal force. But anyway, that's where Red Wolf comes from. So playing the Airwolf theme was obviously very fitting. And of course, the Airwolf theme was done by Sylvester LeVay, and who worked with... Sylvester LeVay's worked with a bunch of different people. But anyway, that was by Sylvester LeVay. Which, by the way, Airwolf, now I know it went to season 4. I didn't mention that. Of course, season 4 of Airwolf used a lot of stock footage and recycled footage from seasons 1 through 3, but it had a totally new cast, and it was on the USA Network back in the 90s. Season 4, I actually like a lot. In fact, it has Grant Wyn Davies, who went on to do Forever Knight, one of my favorite shows, even though it's a cop show. It's about vampires and all. It's just an awesome 90s show. Triple black all the way, by the way, if you notice, with Nick Knight and that. In fact, the movie that Forever Knight was based off of, Nick Knight actually starred Rick Springfield, and I'm a huge Rick Springfield fan. Anyway, I'm getting way off track. So Airwolf, great show. I definitely paid homage to that, in all the sounds. A lot of the sounds are from Airwolf as well. So yeah, Red Wolf came from that. And so I used the Airwolf theme for the takeoff. And, I'll tell you this here, and I might, if I get to talk a little bit about the making of 199C during 199C, I'll mention it there. But I'll admit, like, when I set up that scene and the Airwolf theme started, when I finally put all that together, I'll tell you, I had one tear. Like, I kind of cried a little because I've always wanted to fly Airwolf, and I sort of felt like I was. I mean, when you put all that together, I don't know, you feel it. So anyway, that music comes from that. Also, the music after Agent Sovryn says, hold on, and they're flying back to the base. That music is also from the Airwolf soundtrack, and I think that specifically is by Mark J. Cairns. That music, that's Moffat's theme from the show. And then when that ends off, I kind of cut it off early, and it goes back into Naruto's, when my eyes turn red. So that's the music. None of it is mine. I mean, I could give credit. I don't feel maybe credit to Naruto. And I'll be using that music again, so I'll give credit to him then. The Airwolf music, I have no qualms about using that because, you ready for a little inside secret? I have the 2-disc Airwolf album, okay? You cannot buy this in stores. You are not going to buy it on Google Play Music or whatever. Like, you're just not going to get your hands on it. It was a special release of, I think, 1,500 pieces. I think it was 1,500 pieces it came out like in 98. And, they sold it, and I didn't know that it came out. Okay. When it came out, I didn't realize that it was there, and eBay was a thing at the time. And when I found out that came out, I was at a convention and somebody said, did you get that 2-disc Airwolf set? I was like, no. How the fuck did I not know about this? And of course, I mean, back then, how did you find out about anything? I mean, now you have websites dedicated to releases of this shit, but back then you just didn't know. So I got my hands on it, and frankly, it cost about $1,200. So I've paid my dues. If anyone wants to come after me for playing the Airwolf music, fuck you. Okay, I paid serious money for that, and I'm gonna play it. Anyway, that's that. I mean, maybe somewhere there's a torrent of it available now, but I've had it forever. And yeah, there you go. So that's where all that music comes from. Just to explain that. None of that was mine. But most of it I have no qualms playing, especially the Airwolf music. I mean, that in my opinion, I could use that soundtrack till the end of eternity. That is bought and paid for. Nobody should pay that much money for a double disc CD. But it's love of the game, right? As they say. Okay, so why don't I get into a little bit of a story here, and then I do have a couple questions. One of them is a huge subject that I look forward to talking about. And then maybe we can have some fun at the end if we still have time. So what happened is that yesterday, now there's Pocket, the app Pocket that allows you to save stories for offline reading or to read them later. Now, I don't know about you. In all honesty, the instant I save a bookmark, and I haven't read it, I'm just never going to get to it. I mean, just honestly, there's just so much shit that keeps coming out. I mean, I have Sovryn Tech Stories. I have a bookmarks folder that is thousands deep. There are so many stories in it, and I will probably never get to them. And a lot of them are also, unfortunately, I feel bad about this. They're stories that have been user submitted, or listener submitted, I should say. I keep wanting to call you guys users, like I'm Tron or something, but I'm not. Anyway, so, using Pocket, I don't really use it because I don't see it as being that helpful to me. It's okay if you find it helpful. But I signed up for it to kind of test it out and everything. And so you get emails from them where they show you sort of the best of the web. Now, this is handy, okay, because it works as, Pocket, just this email that they send out. Apparently what they base this on, and maybe this isn't true anymore based upon what I'm about to tell you about. Okay, what they base this on is what are the most saved stories on Pocket. So they use that metric, to show you what's really popular on the internet. And I think that's a great idea, as long as they're not collecting user data, which they probably are, but okay. So this is how I found a lot of really great shit. I mean, I always check out this email when it comes out. It's called Pocket Hits. And yesterday morning, I woke up and I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked at what I saw in a good way. Because they give you the lead story, and they kind of tailor it towards maybe some of your choices or whatever. I don't know to what degree they tailor things. Anyway, the lead story said something the title was "Don't Vote. It Doesn't Matter. See Why." And I was like, no way. Somebody actually got a story out there like that, and it was a big deal. And so within the email, I never clicked on the story. I never read the story. Okay, in the email, they start to give you, a very quick shot of how the story starts off. And within the first sentence, it says, no, it actually does matter. Okay, so I was like, all right, fuck it. It's I knew it. There's no way that kind of story was getting through. And I mean, if you just read past the headline, you would see that this story was not anti-voting at all. It was just, it was going for shock value with the headline. Now, later that night, I get another email. A lot of people got it. Everybody, pretty much anybody that's a Pocket user or ever signed up for Pocket got another email. And here's the email. I'm going to read it to you because this is really important. Okay, and the subject of the email is apologies. This is from Pocket. This is from the company Pocket, okay? Get that straight. Apologies for our earlier email. Your vote matters more than ever! Exclamation point. Here it is. Dear Pocket Hits subscribers, this morning, the subject of one of our Pocket Hits newsletters read, quote, "Don't vote, it doesn't matter, see why," end quote. Even though the contents of the email contradicted this statement and explained that it was a joke, this subject was beyond foolish and exhibited terrible judgment. It wasn't funny. It was just plain irresponsible. Stallion breaking in. I'm going to go back to that paragraph in a minute. Okay, but I want to read the rest of the email to you. Today matters. This election matters. It's why we closed the Pocket office today so that every Pocket employee had an opportunity to vote and pitch in to help increase voter turnout in our cities across the country. Leading up to today, we've also been partnering with Vote Please to help it's a group, to help register thousands of voters. Please get out there and vote today. While you do that, we're going to fix our editorial process to add checks and ensure this never happens again. Nate at Pocket. Does everybody else get out of that email what I got? All right, first off, so if Pocket, if the purpose of Pocket is if Pocket Hits, maybe that's not the purpose of Pocket Hits. Maybe Pocket Hits is just like something that news, like that the New York Times can buy, and thus they can kind of advertise their stories on it. Even though usually Pocket Hits kind of has sponsored links in it, like it'll tell you when it's something that's sponsored. I'm not exactly sure how Pocket Hits works, but it really doesn't matter how it actually works. Okay, this is coming from a Silicon Valley company. This is coming from Pocket. Even though the contents of this email, I'm reading it again, contradicted the statement and explained that it was a joke, this subject was beyond foolish and exhibited terrible subject. It wasn't funny. It was just plain irresponsible. Pocket is telling you, as anarchists, and I know a lot of my listeners are anarchists. I know not all of you are. But even if you're not an anarchist, this should be very, very concerning and insulting. They are saying that the opinion that your vote doesn't matter is irresponsible and foolish. That is what Pocket is saying. Now that's ridiculous. Okay, if Pocket if like the purpose of their emails, it would seem to be is to be a news aggregator. That means that their opinions, okay, their ideologies are getting in the way of the aggregation. Or maybe they weren't before, but now they will, because what did they say? While you do that, we're going to fix, this is right from the email, we're going to fix our editorial process to add checks and ensure this never happens again. You getting this straight? Pocket is telling you, we will never allow anarchist content in our emails ever again. That's exactly what they're saying. They're saying the idea that voting doesn't work, the idea of not voting, we will never allow that to get out there not through our system. Now, they're a business. They have the right to do that. Okay? That's fine. I get that. I'm not saying they did necessarily anything unethical. Is this censorship? Yeah, I think so. But whatever. Okay, they're a business. They get to call that shot. However, be clear on this, because this is a statement that I think is true for Facebook. It's true for any company out there that's involved in the aggregation of news. Okay, and this speaks. Bottom line, they are not going to allow actual real freedom, real liberty, real anarchism get out there to anybody. They will not. They'll make sure their editorial process won't allow for it. And so when I hear people saying, oh, isn't it amazing? Look at the internet. It's getting everything out there. Everything's out there. And now, and you could reach, even with this really, edgy message, even with this anarchist message, you could reach millions. Oh, yeah. Not for long. Yes, you can make your own website and get up your own shit. But the bottom line is that, news aggregation, aggregation of content, curation of content is incredibly important. News curators, maybe curator is the word I should be using, not necessarily aggregator. Okay. But curation of content, I think, is a great thing. I think it's an important thing. But guess what? The system is working against you. We are back to effectively, we're getting back to, in my opinion, with this email, it just proves it. We're getting back to, the old days of newspapers and all that, to where, the government, somebody in the White House or, wherever, in Britain can call the prime minister, whatever, or, the prime minister can call the news organizations. And they have protocols for this, where you call them up and they say, okay, we need you to do like a class D or whatever your country calls it. Okay. Where you don't talk about this story at all. And that can happen now. That happens on the internet now. The internet has not democratized this stuff. Okay. Because the signal to noise ratio is crazy, and the big time curators, you think you're going to reach people, you're going to reach the average person. Well, the average person goes through Pocket, and guess what? Pocket's not going to let your shit get out. Fuck you. This is also similar. This bolsters a point that I've made. Okay. I've talked about how using Google Now, of course, it's not Google Now anymore, but when using Google Now, okay, when using OK Google, No matter how many times you look up anarchism, no matter how much of your search, you can put anarchism in your fucking name. No matter what you do about bringing up anarchism, you will never, ever get a card. Okay, a little news card or whatever, or a subject card like you would get in Google now. You'll never get one about anarchism. In Cortana will never share a story with you about something happening in anarchism. And folks, there's shit going on every day. Listen to the podcast, The Ex-Worker. Okay, it might not be anarcho-capitalism, but who gives a shit? I don't. Anti-state, anti-authority is anti-authority. Good, get to it. Okay, you look. I mean, there's stuff going on all the time that could get reported. It does not. Not through these major sources that the average person has access to. You're not going to reach these people. You're just not. I think this is horrendous a pocket. I think this is censorship. I think this is, this is crazy. And they said it. It says right here, we're going to fix our editorial process to add checks and ensure this never happens again. That is them saying the idea of not voting or anti-voting rhetoric will never make it on Pocket. There you have it, folks. And you thought Pocket was just like some dumb app, that allows you to store your stories. So anyway, I wanted to talk about that. I was so livid when I saw this. In fact, Stephanie and I, we were having dinner when this email came in. We paused what we were doing, what we were watching. And I said, holy shit. It's like, this is crazy. Who the hell are they to go on about this? There you go. New boss, same as the old boss, right? That seems to be the order of the day. Anyway, enough with that email. Why don't we get into another question? And I'll read the question here. It's a little on the longer side, but that's totally okay because when subjects like this, they need to be. Hey Brian, I've got a subject for the Q&A that was triggered by one of your recent FB posts. You recently mentioned how libertarians' heads explode the second the phrase "quote unquote" post-scarcity is mentioned. I haven't yet read any serious scholarship on the topic, but I've been rolling the idea around in my head for a while, and I'm not ready to dismiss it out of hand. We already have post-scarcity in intellectual property, and there are other goods in which we should be able to achieve at least a pseudo-post-scarcity, perhaps a term to use. I'm not denying that human desires are unlimited, which may be partially addressed by fully immersive VR, or that there aren't challenges to the concept, but with the seeming quote-unquote progress of technology, I think it's something to take seriously. I have other thoughts and am still exploring the implications of post-scarcity, but this is getting a bit long for the current purpose. You've teased it before, but I'd like to hear your more detailed take on the concept. Carpe Lucem. Carpe Lucem to you as well. Messenger, thank you so much. So this is an interesting thing. Actually the messenger's absolutely right on, or the listener, I guess I'll say, is right on with the point that with intellectual property, like, yes, we are totally in post-scarcity. There, if Motley Crue comes out with a new album or Bon Jovi comes out with a new album, which they did, I actually really enjoy it. If Bon Jovi comes out with This House Is Not For Sale, everybody could have that album, like the MP3s, right? There's a finite amount of CDs, but as far as digital, there's copies everywhere. And really digital, in fact, interesting story, Bon Jovi actually released, before the album even came out, it used to be a big deal. You'd have album listening parties and, you'd want to keep it really secret. You'd only want to release certain singles and all this stuff right before an album comes out. But Bon Jovi's like, look, I can't stop people. I heard this in an interview. He was doing an interview with Eddie Trunk. It was great. I'm a huge Bon Jovi fan and an Eddie Trunk fan. But anyway, he was in the interview and he said, he was releasing live performances of the entire album because right now they're on Bon Jovi's on a tour, kind of a mini tour for the album, and they're playing the entire album, and that's largely all they're playing. I think that's great for one. First off, from a music fan's perspective, I think it's beautiful that they are, that they're playing their new album in its entirety, because I wish more bands would do that. I want to hear the new album. I want to hear it played. I want to know that the band takes the album seriously, right? And so, they did that, and Eddie Trunk asked Bon Jovi, it's like, why are you releasing this album? The album hasn't even come out yet, but people can just go on YouTube and hear the whole song. And he says, look, he said, people can get their hands on the album. I'm not going to stop anybody. I can't stop anybody from doing that, and I'm not going to stop them. Yes. Yeah. What a brilliant, John Bon Jovi has always been a brilliant businessman. And I've actually, taken to heart a lot of his stuff, a lot of his business tips and tricks. But he just proved it. He's like, I can't stop it. He says, so I might as well just embrace it and say, okay, you want to hear the album? You want to see the live performances? Here it is, totally for free on YouTube. Fucking right. Is that a marketing trick? Yeah, it certainly is that. But it's also, he clearly, based upon his own words, he obviously understands that he cannot control intellectual property anymore. He just can't. And that's great for somebody that's been in the business for so long, and has been so successful in the business. For him to recognize that, I think that's dynamite. That's wonderful. Okay, so it's true. With intellectual property, we pretty much are at a level of post-scarcity. Now, that raises a lot of... to get into... All right, so let's talk about post-scarcity a little bit more, because I think the digital realm actually raises a lot of interesting points about economics, and it raises a lot of interesting points about this idea of post-scarcity, or as the term that the listener created, which I think might be useful, pseudo-post-scarcity. That might be the best way to kind of describe it. Okay, so post-scarcity is very simply, and this is a term that gets used by a lot of people, so it can have a multitude of definitions, but the definition that I'm effectively going to run with is that post-scarcity is the idea that you in the most literal sense, that literally you have gotten rid of scarcity and that anything a human could want at any given moment, they could possibly have. Okay, there's unlimited food, there's unlimited starships, there's unlimited all this blah, 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 blah. Okay, some people describe Star Trek, like the Federation, that in that future that is post-scarcity, to where you can kind of have everything. Well, it's not exactly, it's post-scarcity in that all of your needs can get met, food and all this stuff. But your wanton desires, obviously not all of them can get met. And most people that talk about post-scarcity, I really don't think that they're that literal. That you could get to the point to where one person could instantly have 1,000 starships, and then in the next 5 minutes they could have another 1,000 starships. They could have all the planets they want. Nobody's anybody making the claim that that's what post-scarcity is. I think that they are insulting it. I think that it's a straw man. They're just wanting to they're oversimplifying, and they're wanting to insult people that say the words. Now, it's true. Their heads do explode when you bring up post-scarcity. Okay, because the idea, I think the kind of the bigger concern is that, or the bigger concern with a lot of people that bristle at post-scarcity is that you would get to a world where you don't need money. And people think that that's impossible. Now, I am not going to say that that's impossible. I think you can make alternative economic choices to where you don't have to have money. And at the same time, you could still have an advanced culture, a technologically advancing society, and all of that. And there is historical proof for this. You look at, you look at the Incas. The Incas didn't have money. They had money, but it was only money to deal with, say other cultures or stuff like this, at various trading posts. But everything that the Inca was devising, and a lot of it was incredibly unique. So it's not like they got it from other cultures. They had more of a time system. Okay, now you could say, well, then time was their money, and it was a time tax and all that. Okay, but they weren't using a medium of exchange known as money to do things. All right, so and they were for what they were, and at the time and where they were an incredibly advanced and continually advancing society. Now, I'm not saying we need to go do what the Incas did. I'm sure as hell not saying that. I'm just saying that you're dead wrong when you say that without money you cannot advance technology and you cannot advance a culture. That's horseshit. We have examples. We know. Now, so with post-scarcity, okay, the concern is that there isn't money. And, I'm just going to make a quick comment on that. Okay, not that I am, seeing a future where there isn't money necessarily, or all of this, but I think this quote gets attributed to Benjamin Franklin. I love this old quote where the only people that are afraid of a world without money are scoundrels. because they're people who, because then they would have to be valued based upon who they are as a person instead of what's in their bank account. Like, that's the point that Benjamin Franklin is making. And I think that's an interesting point to consider. Especially when you look at how many, what they call celebritarians, like these these libertarians that become a big deal within their, own movement, which is incredibly small. Just how personally they're all a fucking mess. And I mean, all of them, Kokesh, Berwick, Molyneux, go down the list. I mean, these guys have, their personal lives are atrocities. And the stuff they spew is usually absolutely horrendous. So anyway, oh boy, how did I even get into that? Right, I was saying, and these are the people that espouse, no, we got to have money, we got to have a currency, because, well, they're wanting to base their self-worth probably on their bank account, because if people looked at their lives, oh shit. Anyway, so post-scarcity, again, it's not. I don't really think anybody uses it as in literal a sense as to where you can just have anything at any time. Now, like the listener was saying in the question, okay, yeah, there's a person can have kind of infinite desires, and there's only finite energy and matter in the universe. So how could you possibly have all that? Well, I think that there's something that people forget. And this goes back to, and I'm not saying the listener did this. I'm saying in general, people that, critics of the idea of post-scarcity, there's a part of the equation that they miss. Okay, just like when we talk about the Drake equation, right? About how, there's alien life everywhere. What are you talking about? There's all these stars, blah, 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 and the universe is this big. There has to be, there's life fucking everywhere. When the part of the math that they miss in that equation is how hard is it? What are the chances that, whatever, proto goo comes together to create, to create life? What are the mathematical chances of that? That number stands in huge contrast to no matter how many planets exist in a Goldilocks zone. And then, what does the Drake equation say? Well, then it falls. That's when we get the Fermi paradox that comes up, because then it's like, oh, wait a second, but if we add in this number, suddenly, it's not so good a chance that there's a lot of life in the universe, right? So with post-scarcity, the math that I think a lot of people forget is that as it stands right now, people only don't live that long. People, we have more centenarians than we've ever had, people that are 100 or older. That's true, and that's great. I think it's a wonderful development. Okay, but let's just say people on average, even being generous, let's say people on average only live 100 years. So you can have infinite desires, yes, but you still, only have so much time within which you can act upon those infinite desires. And you can only do so many things at once, right? And, so the concept of post-scarcity, when you add in the math of a human lifetime, then I think it does become a point where you could get to this pseudo post-scarcity, not a 100% literal definition of post-scarcity, which, again, anybody that believes in post-scarcity or think it's an achievable goal, none of them actually none of them are being that fucking literal. Okay, that's just people being assholes. When they start to make arguments against the literalness. So the thing is, I think you really could have a pseudo post-scarcity. What almost it cannot possibly be a literal post-scarcity. I agree. Okay. But you can have a pseudo post-scarcity when you add in the amount of time that people live. That they only live 100 years. Okay. They can only do so much. They can only ask for so many things. I mean, there's just, yeah, I think it's something that could actually happen. And in fact, when you read a lot of Kevin Carson's work, in fact, I know guys who readily, and these are brilliant guys. Okay. Now, they've said it to me, in more private conversations, so I don't want to name their names. Okay. But these are people who are names in the, in the quote unquote liberty movement. All right. Who have said to me, they'll say, yeah, I could post scarcity, say under the definition of Kevin Carson, to where, the the free market just makes things so that you only have to work like 3 hours a week, and production, just gets to this, insane level to where, things get to like, say, closer to a zero marginal cost and all that. That definition of post-scarcity, that's totally possible. And that's pretty much what I think everybody is saying when, anybody that's really espousing post-scarcity is that they're talking about that to where, like we've talked about many times on Cyber Tech, look, there's plenty of food on the planet. It may not all be the best food, but even then, there's labs making meat that literally bleeds, but it's like fake meat. And yes, there's problems with that. What does it take to produce that? Isn't it easier to just have a cow? Yes. I know. Okay, but my point is that kind of technology is developing. Okay, but my point being is that there's plenty of food to feed everybody on the planet. All there is a distribution problem. So the concept is that if you opened up the free market, okay, that, and you got rid of governments, which their regulations are what's holding back a lot of this food, is what's throwing away millions of pounds of food, a month or a year. It's insane. Okay, so we have a distribution problem. So get regulations out of the way. The distribution problem stops. There's plenty of food for everybody. There's plenty. And could you get food production? Could you get a lot of these things to a point of closer to zero marginal cost? Okay, not, it's near zero marginal cost. Everything obviously has some kind of cost. Okay, but it's near zero marginal cost to where, it costs practically nothing to make it. Like something that's getting to near zero marginal cost, smartphones. Literally, it's getting to the point where people are able to give away smartphones. Yes, money is made elsewhere, but it is a product. It is a market category to where things are getting to near zero marginal cost. Because, honestly, like if we didn't need all the power in a Galaxy S7, you could make these phones for practically nothing. So again, it's near zero marginal cost. But could food get there? Yeah, I think it could. I think a lot of these things could get to near zero marginal cost. And at that point, it's effectively pseudo post-scarcity. And if people, if we get to a point in the market to where people, even within regulation, people are already realizing that it's far superior to only have your people work, not even part-time, but like 4 to 10 hours a week. There are companies, there are people, and they make a lot of money within that 4 hours. Like, they're making, say hundreds of dollars an hour or something like that, right? Now, you could say, well, those are just Silicon Valley jobs, but this can spread elsewhere to other parts of the economy. Okay, when you get to, people, but my point is that people are getting to the point where they realize, hey, with automation and a lot of this different stuff, we don't have to work that much anymore. So it's possible to get to that, to where work would be, minimal. Again, the problem that people have with post-scarcity is they take it way too literally, and nobody means that. Like absolutely nobody means that, unless you're reading the Culture series, from Ian M. Banks. Okay, to where, then there's like AIs and they're kind of doing everything, and then it is, very literally a post-scarcity, or at least as close as you could get to a literal post-scarcity as there is. But that's science fiction. But in reality, I think yes, you can get to a point to where, anything you want or need at a certain point, generally what anyone, as in like what your needs, that could also equate with the amount of time you have in life and all of this. You're about to get there. And of course, people that, come on, these people aren't the people that espouse post-scarcity. They're not that stupid. Okay. They know that there is in the universe, there is a finite amount of places that you could live. They know that. So it all comes down to definition of terms. But I think that, and I like using that term, kind of a pseudo post-scarcity. I think that hits at it, because that is a point that I think people could reach. That is a point that humanity could reach. Now, I'm also into life extension technology. So do people say, well, fine, you add in this amount of time that people have to use things. What about life extension technology? What about when people are living to 400 years old? Then can we still have post-scarcity? Well, you're not totally understanding my concept of time. Okay. And my point is that like you can only do so much at any given moment. All right. And whatever amount of property you're living on or something like this, okay, you can only fit so much on there. All right. There's more math than just, oh, I can have fucking everything. Nobody's saying that with post scarcity. Okay. But it just goes to show how little libertarians and ANCAPs actually research anything really, because they would know that people that espouse post scarcity aren't making the arguments that they are making that ANCAPs and libertarians are making against post scarcity proponents. They know that, but they don't know that because they don't care. Because they're just like, no, I'm fucking right. Shut up. That's how it goes, folks. Believe me. So anyway, I think, to a degree, yes, we could be even on track right now to a world with post-scarcity. Now, you could end up, frankly, if VR takes off, and this is where things get interesting for me, virtual reality is going to change everything. I mean, in many ways it already is, and the tools... The fortunate thing, and we talked about this briefly on Sovereign Tech Prime episodes, we talked about it where, or it was last week, it was actually 199B, where Microsoft clearly, like their hardware event that they held, they are all about creating the infrastructure and tools for people to be able to build, a mixed reality, merged reality, alternate reality, virtual reality future. Okay, this is where things are different from the 90s because there's a lot of people saying that VR is a gimmick right now. Absolutely not, because the tools are being given to everyone and even largely for free because it's all built into Windows 10, right? That's why there's Paint 3D and all this different stuff. It is changing. You can see the infrastructure getting built, and Microsoft is really leading the charge in that, and Apple's being left far behind. Google is taking it seriously. Okay, certainly. But any company that's not on board with this, they're in trouble. So anyway, so VR changes things because then, yes, absolutely, you could have, effectively post-scarcity. I mean, especially if food costs drop, if we fix that distribution problem with food, oh, fuck. I mean, because then there's no limit. There's only so much storage space. Come on. Okay. Based upon, say you created a world with the graphical prowess. And as we've seen in VR so far, people are more impressed by great experiences with low graphics than they are with, high-end graphics. All of the popular apps and games and software in VR are all, they're very anthropomorphized. Like they do not look realistic at all. Okay. And I think that would hold true going forward. So if it doesn't have to be hyper realistic, then even then, I mean, there's all the graphical power you're going to ever need. I mean, all the graphical power and all the storage space that you could probably ever need. Eventually, you're going to have to replace your hard drive. Ooh, like that costs so goddamn much. Again, it's pseudo post scarcity. It might as well be free. It costs practically nothing. And even if you went with cloud storage and all, I mean, like there's so many ways that this could go to where it is effectively post scarcity. There is no such thing as literal post scarcity. Of course, we'd have to be able to create, like literally, we would have to be able to create more matter and energy for there to be literal post scarcity. Do you really think that people think we're going to be able to do that? I have a bridge to sell you in China, okay, and I have all the bridges that you could ever imagine because obviously you're that dumb if you think that that's what these people actually believe. And I'm not speaking to you, Sovereign Tech listeners. I'm just speaking kind of out loud in general. And then this is for Patreon, so I suppose I should be a little more specific in who I'm talking about. But anyway, I think in multiple ways this kind of stuff is really going to be achievable. But keep in mind, no one is talking about literal post-scarcity. Nobody is talking about that. Nobody in their right mind would say that they can actually expand the universe. Nobody. Well, I mean, that's in their right mind. I mean, if they think they can do that, well, their problem isn't that they're post-scarcity. They're probably religious. All right. And they have some wild quantum, we're all connected, man, kind of stuff, which we're not. Newsflash. Spoiler alert for life. We're not all connected. We're individuals. We all have secret places underneath our skulls. And I'm glad for that, too. So I hope that answers that question. Again, the main takeaway here is that nobody, even proponents of post-scarcity, none of them are talking about a hyper-literal post-scarcity. They're just not. They're just saying that things can get to such a low cost, and you could get to a point of where you have to do so little work to maintain a very lavish lifestyle. And again, get regulations out of the way, let those free markets reign, and you've got it. Or I think you can very much get to that point. It's not a guarantee. That's an important thing too, is that, when people say, well, let the market handle it and all that, that's not a guarantee necessarily of best results, but it does give the option. It does create it does create an environment to where this sort of thing can happen. Anyway, there you have it. That's my thoughts on it. If you think I'm crazy, message me. Okay, if you take issue with post-scarcity, message me. I will talk about it on the show. Okay, you don't have to walk away saying Brian Sovryn's insane. Just message me, and we can talk about it. Okay, why don't we get into let's get into another question here. I really hope that answers the question. If it didn't, if you have more questions about post-scarcity, ask away, and I will get into them. But again, the other point that I wanted to just highlight is that people forget about, yes, there are finite resources, okay, but there is also finite time. And that time, the finiteness of that time needs to be added against the finiteness of resources, and the amount of life that a person can live, could effectively, so much resources, human usable resources could be created that within the average human lifetime, a person could literally have everything. Okay, and everybody forgets about that little bit of math. So, but there you have it. You've got it. Go forward with it. Okay, we're at the 56-minute mark, so I've got a couple minutes. I'll just touch on this. Somebody asked me, they were talking about how I always give Star Wars updates and all this. They were asking me if I could give an update on the status of Star Trek. Yeah, sure. So what's going on in Star Trek? A lot of great things are going on in Star Trek right now. Though there are some people are a little concerned because, this is just going to be a little fun, take it out segment. And since we're talking about post-scarcity, hey, let's talk about the Federation. Woohoo! Which, again, clearly in and of itself, when people call that post-scarcity, and they give it as an example all the time, obviously the Federation is not post-scarcity itself. Okay, and so take that for the fact that the example proves that when people talk about post-scarcity, they're not talking about literal post-scarcity. All right, now, anyway, so Star Trek, what's going on? The concern is that, the show Star Trek Discovery, which is supposed to get released in January of 2017, and I was really excited for it because we got Star Wars Rogue One coming out December 16th, and I was like, holy shit, inside of 3 weeks, we're going to have new Star Trek. I can't handle it. I'm just going to be coming in my pants all the time. Woo! And I would be. But the show got backed up to May 2017. And Brian Fuller, who was one of the reasons that people were very excited about Star Trek because he does such a great job with all of his other work, and he had worked in Star Trek previously with Voyager, Deep Space Nine, and all that. Brian Fuller he's still going to kind of be involved, and he still did write, really, the first few episodes anyway. He is walking away. Supposedly, it had, it was totally amicable. There weren't any problems. He just has other projects, American Gods, whatever that he's doing. But there's still great people on that team. You still have Nick Meyer. You still have the author for all the post season 7 Voyager books, which all of those are great. Christine, she's awesome. You have great people on that team still. So I'm really not worried about Star Trek or about Star Trek Discovery, the new show. I think it's going to be great. They just announced the first novel for Star Trek Discovery, which is going to be written by David Mack, which he does great work. David Mack has written for all kinds of different Star Trek series, the novels anyway. He also wrote the great book Star Trek Vulcan, which is like this tour guide of Vulcan. It's so good because it never breaks character. I love it. So good stuff. I'm seeing really largely nothing but good news. Not hearing any casting news. Of course, the show, if you hadn't heard, the show is supposedly going to be not about a captain, but there's admirals getting casted, like there's going to be regular admirals on and all this stuff. This is going to be a very different show. I can only think that that's a good thing, in my opinion. I am all for that. Let's make it a very different show, and let's not have it center on a starship captain for once. I am totally on board with that. Yahoo! So, I mean, and kind of that was already a thing. Like Deep Space Nine, which for a lot of people is their favorite Star Trek, didn't concentrate, at least originally, on a Starfleet captain. Of course, then comes season 3 and season 4, it effectively did, when the Defiant came on, and of course, Sisko finally became, he was promoted in rank to captain. So yeah, all that I think that just sounds great. And well, let's see, the comic books that IDW is doing, all those are Boldly Go and oh shit, now I can't remember the name of they're doing an anthology. It was called Waypoint. They're doing like an anthology series now too, to where it's monthly, and they'll do a different universe, or a different franchise, maybe every month or every once in a while. They did a really cool one where like Data was pretty much an entire ship, and like he was an entire crew for a ship, and Geordi was the captain. That was fantastic. So anyway, so I love what's going on in the comic books. I think those are really cool. In fact, I think next month in December they're going to have the Borg appear in the comic book for the Kelvin timeline movies, which are the J.J. Abrams, what used to be called the Abrams verse. Now it's called the Kelvin timeline. Which is great because those comic books, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that those comics are largely considered canon within the Kelvin timeline. Like a lot of little hints and things that happen in the movies, like in Star Trek Beyond and in Star Trek Into Darkness and all that, are references to what happens in the comics. So, I mean, if you're not reading the IDW Kelvin timeline comics, you're missing out on so much story that makes the movies even better. Maybe that's... I hadn't thought about that. Maybe that's why I like those movies so much, because I've got all the background. Or, I'm one of the people. I'm not the only one, obviously. I don't mean to boast. But I know a lot more background of what's going on. And I like that. I like it when franchises do that. When they make you to really appreciate what's going on. And maybe that's why some of them lose money. But they make you, do the whole multimedia experience. You got to read the books. You got to read the comics. Got to listen to this. Got to, you know what I mean? I love that. Create that whole experience. I think it's wonderful. So anyway, so all that's good. I just got my hands on the Star Trek Encyclopedia, the new version that just came out in October 2016. This baby is fucking huge, but it's beautiful. It's wonderful. In fact, I learned something in it that I had I don't know how this escaped my mind. I had no idea. But anyway, it's this massive. It's 2 volumes now. The Star Trek Encyclopedia used to only be 1 volume. But it's 2 volumes now, and it covers everything up to Into Darkness. So Beyond isn't in it. Obviously, Discovery's not in it. And the Okudas have this odd thing where they kind of run off of what Gene Roddenberry said, to where the animated series isn't canon, which I think is crap, because the animated series is so good. I love the fact that like Memory Alpha and a lot of other sources, or a lot of other Star Trek media, make references to it and use it as effective, more or less fact, or as canon. So I'm a little disappointed by that. I thought they could have rectified it. I mean, come on, guys. As much as I love Gene Roddenberry, he's gone. He's been gone for a while now. Star Trek really isn't his. I mean, yeah, it's still his baby, but obviously it's not his anymore. So anyway, but it's really, really good. I mean, like just a phenomenal. Both volumes are great. I mean, it's just huge. I mean, you really like. I took a picture of myself and shared it on social media, very social media. Holding it, and I'm not a small person, and this book is massive. I mean, it's bigger than far. I mean, just far larger than my my head, and I mean, just gigantic. And one of the unique things that just in perusing it that I learned, and one of the things I like about it that you don't get on Memory Alpha, because I think a lot of people would say, well, what do you need the Star Trek Encyclopedia for? You can just go to Memory Alpha. Well, the Star Trek Encyclopedia does a great job with a lot of the graphics work, because Michael and Denise Okuda, the people that have been making they've been making Star Trek reference books forever, but they've been making the the encyclopedia for a long time. Of course, this has been the first update in probably like 15 years, maybe 15. But anyway, they're great graphic design artists, which is what they did on Star Trek, when they worked for, with Star Trek. And so you get a lot of very unique looks that are canon, in the Star Trek Encyclopedia. The artwork is really the thing in many ways of what you can get, like what certain ships look like and what they look like in comparison to others and all this. I mean, you get very unique stuff in it that I think is super important. So the thing that was interesting to me that I learned is they did a Enterprise. They were showing kind of a history of the Enterprise in the encyclopedia, and they were doing a size comparison chart. Okay, which they did, 15 years ago too. But the Enterprise from the Kelvin timeline, from the Abrams verse, is fucking huge. Like, it is massive. And I don't know that it ever got mentioned. I don't remember ever seeing it in Memory Alpha. Maybe that's why I never realized it. And I even have, I have the Hanes guide. They came out with that funny, Hanes guides, like for, not Hanes like underwear, but Hanes like the car manual company. Okay. They came out with a Hanes guide a few years ago for the Enterprise. And in that they mention the Kelvin timeline Enterprise, like that there's this alternate universe and all this, right? But I don't think even in that they ever mentioned the size of that Enterprise. But it is the largest Enterprise of them all. It's bigger than the Sovryn class. It's bigger than the Galaxy class. It might not be bigger than the Enterprise J, which is like this futuristic, was it Universe class? I think it's the name of it. It might not be bigger than the Enterprise J, but as far as enterprises, between the 21st and 24th century, it is the largest. I can't believe that. That thing's fucking massive. I mean, and its warp nacelles, they're the size of, some of the Enterprises. Like, my mind was blown when I saw it. I was like, holy fuck. Which makes sense. Considering like the size of, say, the like engineering that you see in the movies, and all of that, like these are always these massive rooms. So I guess it has to be that big, but I didn't even know. I didn't realize it. There was that crossover series with the Kelvin timeline. Maybe it was just a DS9 in it. Anyway, I don't know how I never noticed that, but that's how it is. So Star Trek's looking good. That's the bottom line here. Something I really wish that would, the place that Star Trek really needs to make impact again, and for a little while it actually was doing pretty good in that, is when in gaming. We need a great Star Trek game again. And Star Trek Online's fine. I'm not saying anything about that. And there's that VR game that's effectively Bridge Commander with VR. And that's really cool. But I think we need some more like classic traditional games of Star Trek that needs to get out there. That's really the only area that I see they're not doing very well. I think Star Trek Beyond was a great movie. I absolutely hope there's a fourth movie because I've been loving this the Kelvin timeline movies largely. The TV series, things are shaping up nicely with that. In the fiction, in the print media world, I think it's doing a great job. Overall, it's been doing a great job for years now. Ever since they did that big reboot, Simon and Schuster did that reboot back in 2011, 2012 or something. The books have been awesome, especially the Voyager sequel books. So I think Star Trek's doing great. There are, of course, huge issues in the fan film world. We still don't have a lot of great answers on that. We've talked about that in Sovereign Tech Prime episodes. So that's, not something I'm going to revisit here other than that things still aren't looking up in that direction. Star Trek continues for whatever reason, seems to be allowed to continue on. No pun intended. But yeah, things are going great. Star Trek's in as good a shape, in my opinion, other than the botching of the 50th anniversary. Star Trek is in good a shape as Star Wars is. I really think so. I think the new show is going to take off. I'll tell you, I think what's going to happen, because one of the big controversies is over Star Trek Discovery being on CBS All Access, at least in America. Everywhere else it's going to be on Netflix. I don't know how long that's going to last to where they hold on to that, because like Paramount tried doing that before. Like you had UPN, where Voyager was originally syndicated, and then they're like, okay, we want this to be our flagship show on our new network. And UPN eventually flopped. In fact, if Voyager had any ratings problems, in my opinion, it had to do with the fact that you could not watch it on syndication. That was the issue. And I think that eventually people will, I think CBS is going to wisen up and they will just make a contract, they'll just make a distribution deal with Netflix or maybe even Amazon. I don't know. I can't picture that being it, but they'll make a distribution deal with somebody and Star Trek Discovery will get aired elsewhere because that CBS All Access just isn't, I don't think that sort of thing is going to last. And this gets into another subject that I could go down. I got a couple minutes, I guess. I really hope, I hope Blu-ray never dies. I hope physical media really never dies. And honestly, I would be willing, because there's some things that I'm willing to buy. Okay, like there's some things where, yeah, I torrent fucking everything, but the shit I really love, that like I really fucking love, I am happy to shell out money for that. There's honestly not a lot of things that I love that much, okay, to where I'd be willing to to pay 100, 200, whatever. I think most of the great movies and the great shows have already been made, or at least the great franchises have already been made. I've said that before. But I really hope physical media sticks around, because we're heading in a direction, and it's probably going to be a good 10 years or so until the market kind of evens all this out. We're heading in a direction where, like with CBS All Access, then you have HBO Go. You're going to have all these different services that aren't cable and that are going to be like, you're going to have to spend $10 a month for all of them. It's just going to be ridiculous, to just try and watch TV like people are used to. That really won't be happening anymore. But that won't last. I really don't think that's going to last. Eventually things are going to go back to something like cable, or Netflix is just going to end up being like, Netflix will just equate TV. Like, it is just going to be the TV network. And that'll largely be the end of it. Maybe Amazon will have something. Maybe Apple will buy Netflix. I don't know. Okay, but I really hope that it makes such an interesting statement that physical media, as much as it can be proprietary, which Blu-ray, is owned by Sony, right? As much as it can be proprietary, physical media is such the bastion of independence. Because you don't really have to buy into anybody's network. You don't have to do any subscriptions. You don't have to do any of that bullshit. It is the one thing, and it's, in my opinion, it's worth paying a premium for. Okay, if Star Trek Discovery, if like season 1 of Star Trek Discovery came out, and frankly, if it cost like $100 or $150 for the 4K Blu-ray version of that, not that I can afford that, I'm saying if I could, I would pay that. Like, I would pay the premium to hold a physical copy. Just so I wasn't tied in and I didn't have to give money to all these dumbass networks. Okay, now, of course, that's why they make these shows. Buying into the networks is what allows them to make these shows and all that shit, right? But if I had to pay a premium to where, buying copies down the line is what made it possible to make a specific show, like a show got funded based upon the fact that you bought it outright instead of bought into networks and all this stuff, that's much more the direction I would go. I know Louis C.K. and some other people have tried to make that a reality where you buy episodes, not networks anymore. And those ideas seem to have failed. Maybe it's too early for that, but that's a direction that things will hopefully go. So hopefully physical media, as much as I enjoy the ease and comfort of digital, I hope physical media lasts for fucking ever. And I think it will, because like I've talked about many times, companies still use like Blu-rays. Guess who the number one buyer of Blu-rays is? Not consumers, Facebook. Facebook buys Blu-rays because that's how they do a lot of their long-term storage is on Blu-rays. Okay, so while Facebook would tell you, just put everything in the cloud, they're putting everything on the Blu-ray. So what do you think you should do? Well, I think you should do what these companies who know something you don't, about their business structure and about everything that's going on, in the tech world. I think you should maybe copy their model and say, okay, well, fuck, I'll buy Blu-rays, right? So anyway, just a little side tangent there. That's enough for this week. Got in some fun stuff with Star Trek. I am really excited about the direction all that's going. We talked about post-scarcity. Again, if you have questions on that, ask me the questions first. Who knows? Maybe if you disagree with me, maybe you can convince me otherwise. Maybe. Wouldn't you want to try on that challenge? Please try it. Or maybe I'll convince you. Maybe you'll be like, oh, well, I didn't think about the whole time aspect of this, that we only have so much time to engage in these infinite desires, and that creates, a natural finiteness, right? Anyway, all right, enough of that. Carpe Lucem, everybody. Woo! Got some other episodes coming out this week. I really do. I'll see you on the other side. And 199C. It's going to be a great time.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.